Keirsten Sires is here as our guest, and a special guest.
Special guest.
And so this is the first time, like I told you before, that I've done an interview live like this in the conference room. Usually you're so far removed that don't even know, I'm, in a different space, and it's a little bit more awkward because it kind of cuts out with sound. So this is now the first professional on cell phone videotaping that we're doing.
I'm honored.
You should be.
Yeah.
All right, so locker room talk. So tell us about it, but before you do that, just talk about, just your history, kind of the story. What got you to this point that you said, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to jump into this, and I see a need in the marketplace for this type of service.
Okay.
So go back a little bit.
All right. So I played tennis and soccer at Skidmore College, and I was going through the recruiting process, obviously, the whole time in my high school career, and I was the firstborn, so my parents had no idea what to do with me, really. My mom played volleyball in college, but, I mean, the recruiting process had changed so much by the time that I was going through that whole time that they kind of didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know, do you talk to coaches? Do you reach out to them? Are camps the right thing? Are tournaments?
Right.
How do we get you exposed and all that kind of stuff? So, I went through my recruiting process. I narrowed it down to 3 schools: Middlebury, Skidmore, and Brandeis. I ended up picking Skidmore at a showcase that I went to at Yale University. Basically kind of committed there after I did my visits and everything, and loved it. So from there, I started off playing tennis my freshman year, and then ended up switching, miss being on a team sport, and also there was a mismatch between my coach and myself, which is fine. It happens all the time. So then I switched to soccer for my next 3 years, which I absolutely loved. My coach was amazing, Lacey Largertoe. She was unbelievable. So basically from there, I graduated, I'll take it back to senior year when locker room talk was kind of started. My partner, Nick Petrella, it was his idea for a class project. And basically we had the whole entire semester to build a fake company. And then at the end of the semester, we had to pitch it to private equity people and venture capitalists. And we did that. And they actually came up to us after, and they're like, you should make this a real idea. Like, here are our cards, so on and so forth.
Did they give you cash?
They didn't give us cash, I wish. I would have spent it on something other than that at the time. So basically, after we graduated, we all had jobs, did our prospective things. Nick was still in college. And then come September 2014, I kind of reached out to everyone and said, hey, why don't we actually try and make this a real business? Let's go for it. We had people tell us right there, and they didn't go up to any of the other people that were doing it. And let's just try and get funding and see what happens. So basically from there, we set up a business plan, kind of laid out how we wanted our website to look, and everything. So we ended up getting funding. And we also went through the whole web process, but we kind of got burned from a couple of people. So it was a very long process, and we didn't end up launching until November.
Were you trying to crowdsource it?
No, we had talked to this programmer who he was going to get equity for doing the work, and then he just literally never did anything but told us he was the whole time and then disappeared. So he wasn't meeting check marks and stuff, and then he completely disappeared.
Did you have an agreement with him?
Yes, so he didn't end up getting the equity because we had it kind of in stages where if he met certain goals, then he would get a portion of the equity. Luckily, we had that in place because now he doesn't obviously have that. And then we ended up switching to a company called Frenic Labs. They're based out of Atlanta. So that's who we're using right now. And from there, we ended up launching in November 2015. So we're obviously relatively new. And, we've just been really working hard to get a lot of content up there and exposure to high school parents as well as college.
So we're going to talk about, I have 2 questions for you. So I want to back up for a second. But I want you to talk about the reason why. What's the purpose of the website and the platform? What service does it provide? How are you going to scale it? But as someone who just got out of school less than a year ago, right?
A year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago. what was that decision that you made when you started your first job? What was your first job?
My first job, Morgan Stanley. It was right after I graduated.
So you were in finance,
Yeah.
and you were kind of saying, do I even like this? Is it boring? Because banking is just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And if you ever watch The Big Short, then you'll realize how evil that industry is. So you said, these are evil people. I want out of here. I want to do my own thing.
Well, the people definitely weren't evil. They were nice people.
They're not watching, so we can say that.
Yeah.
Maybe they are.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. No, I actually, honestly, I did really like the people that I was working with at Morgan Stanley. It was just, it wasn't for me. I wasn't like a desk job type of person. I mean, obviously, I grew up playing every single sport under the sun.
Yeah.
Took that on throughout college, and then going and sitting at a desk all day and kind of having that mentality of okay, I need to sit here even if I'm not necessarily done with all my work or all that kind of stuff was a little bit bothersome. So I think it was just my dad's also an entrepreneur, so he kind of was a little bit of an inspiration. My mom also owned a fitness center for a lot of time, so they're both pretty entrepreneurial.
Yeah, so they supported you. They're like,
oh, absolutely,
do it now. I know how the conversation works. Do it now because 10 years is going to be too late.
Exactly. So that was kind of their... Yeah. Yeah, they're extremely supportive of everything. Yeah, and I know Nick's parents were as well, and everyone's parents that are involved are extremely supportive.
Yeah.
Like everything, emotionally, monetarily, everything. They were just completely on board, which was very nice to, and it made me feel a lot better.
Well, because they believe in you, because you put the effort in. They know you're not going to, just wait around for things to happen.
Right. And it's something that I feel passionately about because I've just seen so many people go through the recruiting process, and there are people that have had a great recruiting process, but they got to the school and then transferred or switched sports, like in my case, or quit the sport altogether. And it wasn't for any... I would never say that there's a quote-unquote bad coach, but there is definitely a mismatch of personalities sometimes that you can't really convey throughout the recruiting process, because coaches are trying to get athletes to their school, and athletes are trying to get into schools.
Right.
So there's just needs to be more of, I think, a sort of balance between the two.
Right. So locker room talk. All right. So the core of what you're just talking about is you've created this digital platform to connect parents and kids with schools, but giving them more content and a player's perspective on their coach.
Right. Exactly.
So that was the reason why you did it. Right?
Exactly.
All right. So that's where you're going. So you saw the need to connect it. How you started putting together the pieces were people that you knew. So you figured out that Nick did this thing well. Maybe not bring a jacket to a game and get surveys. Inside joke.
Yeah. Nick will get it.
And then some of your other partners that all bring different skill sets to it, because you realize, and this is very mature of you, that everybody collectively, you can't do it all. Your bandwidth is only so much.
Right, correct.
And then you have bigger visions for where you want to see this go. And so from where you started in November, which I thought it was awesome, to where you are now, talk about how many coaches have been evaluated, and then what's the number of scale of how many people have actually evaluated those coaches.
Okay. So basically, as of right now, we have about 1,500 coaches rated, 3,000 ratings total. So some of the coaches have 30 ratings, some of them have like 1 or 2. It really depends. Skidmore has a lot, obviously, because we all went there, so we were on top of everyone doing that. Yep. So basically that's where we're at now. I mean, it scales literally across the country, and we have 37 sports as of yesterday. Anything from rifle to alpine skiing to football. Basically, if it's a varsity sport at a school, we try and hit it. And if it's not directly on the site, we give the kids a chance to type in, oh, I had this coach for this sport, and they can kind of let us know, hey, you're missing this. Because it's really difficult to kind of get all that information from every single source, and a lot of information is provided on the NCAA coaches in schools, but not the NAIA or any other sort of league. Like equestrian has a separate league and stuff like that. So that information isn't necessarily out there. So it's basically like the Rate My Professor of college coaches. So we try to give, collegiate student athletes a voice and empower them in that way, and then empower the high school student athletes and their family by giving them some sort of information outside of what they're learning from their basically directly their coach and maybe the 1 or 2 visits that they go on while they're at the, doing the recruiting process. And I mean, there are 8 million high school student athletes.
Right.
And only 460,000 of them end up going to play collegiate sports.
Yeah.
And basically, there could be more student athletes that go to play. There are a lot of teams that we've seen where, somebody's rated their coach, but also said, my coach was great, but we only had 5 girls on our roster for a basketball team, so we needed more manpower. So there's not much our coach can do. Maybe he could have recruited a little bit better, but these were the circumstances that were thrown our way. But people don't realize that there are programs out there that may not win every single game, that, need players that aren't the best of the best. And, you can find those teams easily. You just kind of look at their records and all that kind of stuff, see how they've been doing. And, there's definitely a need for more players. And there's also a need for something like locker room talk to kind of keep things honest and open and kind of call a spade with some things. And then also highlight those really great coaches. I mean, on our website, we have the best rated coaches. So far, I know Andy Shea from Yale. He's a lacrosse coach there. He was on there for a while. And I had also just talked to a couple of my friends from there who absolutely loved him. So, things like that and building awareness around programs that people might not be aware about. Skidmore, Division III schools, and all that kind of stuff. So that's why what we try and hit in the seminars that I do basically is inform people about the whole process and that there's more outside of just Division I collegiate sports.
Yeah. So 2 things I want to talk about.
Sure.
And I thought it was really interesting when you said yesterday, because I asked you we asked you, about the negative comments. And your response was that there's a lot more. It's probably skewed so much higher of positive. It's almost like a restaurant review, so to speak. And you always wonder, like, who are these people who just have a meal that go back and give a bad review? I mean, they have to be so angry. I mean, who has the time to do that?
Yeah.
And if a player is so bitter about their coach or their experience at the school, because sometimes, as you know, it's not always just about the coach. It's about the whole, it could be about the roommate. It could be about everything. There's so much that goes into that. And if you have a coach that's a little bit challenging, you may not have come from a high school that had a challenging program or had a coach that was completely different than your college coach, that could kind of skew it as well. What I love about it, personally, is that the positive side of it, because the negative side, there's always going to be a negative side to every coach, whether the player's not playing enough, whatever it is. But the positive side, you always want to hear what's so great about that.
Right.
There's a reason why a college coach gets to be a college coach. It's not by chance. I mean, so I love that positive spin more than anything. And sometimes I think the validity of someone being negative about it, especially you told me some people use an inappropriate language, that one person, I just think that takes away all their credibility, on what they're saying. So anyways, that's my opinion on it. But I want to talk a little bit more about scaling this business and the things that you are doing on the grassroots level, which is going to be, besides spending a lot of money to eventually market it and get the word out, because obscurity of people not knowing about it is the number 2 reason why businesses fail. Is number 1, they can't figure out how to make money, and number 2, no one knows about them. You can flip that around if you want to, and that's the worst part about it. So what you're doing is the model, which I think is brilliant, is now schools are paying you, high schools are paying you to come in to talk to their student athlete seniors, juniors and seniors?
Actually all grades, freshman through senior. Yeah, I have one coming up this fall. I'm doing 3 separate seminars in one day. Yeah. One to freshmen, one to sophomore, one to juniors and seniors, as well as doing workshops with the guidance counselors and the coaches. Yeah. Yeah, so it varies. Back to the negative positive thing really quickly. So on our site,
don't let it go now. Get your point.
No, if you go on the profiles and somebody does make a comment that is negative and every other one is positive, you can like or dislike the comment, so you can add credibility. You don't even have to necessarily comment. If you see a comment that you don't agree with, you can like or dislike it. So that also adds to the whole thing behind it. I think it's great because you have to show both sides of it.
But I don't know. I look at like when I go to a restaurant and people give a bad review, I'm like, well, they don't know. They probably went to Applebee's the night before. I say the same thing about coaches. I mean, where you're the town your dad and I grew up in, it's like snitches get stitches.
Yeah.
You don't tattletale at a coach, right? Lisa? No tattletaling. But it's important. It is important because 90% of parents have no clue, right? They want more than anything else, parents' pride. They want their kid to go to Yale. They want their kid to go to these because they want to tell their friends and their family, oh, my kid goes to Yale or Harvard, whatever it costs, I'm going to figure it out because it's a brag factor.
Yeah.
The reality of it is 80% of those kids aren't your kids. 80% of our kids are average.
Yeah.
They're average kids. They're going to go to average schools and they're going to have the best. But to break that in parents' thought process, here's your reality of where your kid's going to end up. They can say that they're looking at Penn State and all these other schools to play lacrosse, and then you always see where they're getting recruited, but the final schools are Western Connecticut, and those are the schools that they're going to go to.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, being honest with your talent level is probably one of the biggest things. Getting other coaches to evaluate you. Yeah. And like having them say, I think you're a Division III player, you're a Division II player, or maybe a low D1 player. Like keeping that honesty will make your process so much easier. Right. Because then you can take a step back and say, okay, let me rethink about what schools I want to go to. Yeah. And have a couple of reach schools, sure, and things may work out. And you may rise to the occasion and work your butt off and that kind of thing once you get to the school and play and do all those things. But at first, I would say just take a step back and really think like, okay, I'm not just dealing with my state, and I'm the best in my state, but I have all these other states that I need to compete against. And, someone from Vermont who may be a great football player, you have to now go compete against somebody from Texas. There's no good
football players in Vermont. Let's stop there. I'm sorry if you're from Vermont, but there's 5 of you. Sorry. But it's true. You bring up a great point. You definitely bring up a great point. I also say you should never tell a kid that they can't play somewhere.
Right. No, I agree.
Because there's value to a kid that wants to play up. Mm-hmm. If you want to walk on at a certain school and your goal and your life dream is to play at UConn or to play, that girl that scored that final point at UConn women's basketball game, she was a 5th-year senior. She was a walk-on. Right. She scored in a national championship game, and the entire bench went crazy. Yeah. I got chills watching it. I'm like, you know how much effort that kid and sacrifice that kid had to make to get that one shot in? It was good karma, mm-hmm. where she probably could have went to Trinity, or she probably could have went to Southern, or she probably could have went to a UMass and played 2.5, 3 years. But she chose that process, and to me, there's something about those certain. It's not for every kid because not every kid's going to want to sit on the bench.
Right. No, absolutely. I had to sit on the bench. I switched sports. I had to basically revert back and practice as much as all these other girls were practicing, plus 10 times more because I wasn't. I played soccer 1 year of high school. Yeah. And that was it. So I was like tennis. So I and I was a walk-on. Yeah. And then I ended up scoring gold my senior year. So I understand it.
You're the story. You're the story.
I get it. Yeah. Don't say you can't go play. As soon as I told my parents I wanted to, not continue with the tennis team, they were again supportive and like, okay, like what sport? Let's try and like go for a different sport. We won't play. I was like soccer. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. We're working your butt off over the summer. Yeah.
And you got there, right? You did it. Doesn't matter what level.
Yep.
So your goal is your core of your goal of this business is you saw a need in the marketplace. You saw there's, obviously you have an entrepreneurial spirit because you grew up in that environment of your parents both just grinding it out, right? Just figuring out how to just make a living out of it and working their tails off to do it. And so you grew up in that environment where you're like, this is something I want to do too. Mm-hmm. Your pedigree got you there, your effort and your sacrifice got you there, and everything you've learned along the way, how to work at it and chip away, and you're persistent as hell.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely am.
So what's the next big thing for you guys? You're only 8 months into this thing. Mm-hmm. What's the next big thing? Doing what you're doing really well right now and creating that story?
Yeah, so I think we're going to focus on the head coaches for now, but we definitely want to expand it to assistant coaches and even school programs overall. So it'll be, You know, you can go rate your head coach, your position coach if you have position coaches, depending on what sport you're playing, or just your assistant coach, as well as the program overall. So Skidmore College, you can say, you know, we didn't have football, but every single game that I had at Skidmore, I had friends who would paint their bodies and do halftime shows and do funny things and cheer for us and all that kind of stuff. So I had a good experience with that. My friends always being supportive, and all the teams were supportive of each other and stuff, which you might not get at a huge D1 school. I don't know. I didn't have that experience, but I'm sure everyone's going to the football games. But take a step back. Are they going to all the tennis matches? Are they going to all these other sporting events? And I think commenting on that, and we've talked to a bunch of athletes who would love to comment on the atmosphere overall of their athletic experience, because it's such a huge part of it, and you don't even realize, because it's not fun if you are playing and you have nobody watching you besides like mom and dad. I mean, we all love mom and dad, but we want our friends to see us and then go talk about us after and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's also another huge portion of expanding in the future. But for now, we definitely want to get, I think, to have a completely unbiased opinion on someone, you need to have at least 10 reviews. Yeah. So we're going to aim to get 10 reviews on each of the coaches as best we can, as well as get those statistics up there so people can also see, you know, if everyone's like, wow, this coach was so tough and blah, 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 not saying anything bad, just like tough practices, tough this, tough that, letting them know that they're tough, but they're winning every year. Yeah. You know? And there's a reason behind why they're tough. So if you want to play on a winning team, this might be a coach for you. If they're tough and they're losing every single game, you might want to think, okay, I don't know if I want 5 a.m. practices and to just lose. Right. Most of the time, that's not the case. If they're a tough coach, they're usually probably winning. Yeah. But that's definitely where we want to go to in the future and what we're focusing on now.
Scalability. So how many kids, I think you threw some numbers out yesterday, so how many kids are coming out of high school each year in all sports? Do you know those numbers?
Yeah, it's 8 million.
So you got 8 million. You have 8 million families wondering where their kids are going. How many colleges do you have and sports do you have that are going to fill those 8 million kids?
Well, only 460,000 end up going to play.
And that's
think,
not.
And there's about like 300 to 400 in each NCAA division. Okay. And then NAIA is a whole nother animal, and then some people go to junior college and stuff, so there are other options, but for NCAA there's about 300 to 400 in each division. I think D3 might be the biggest out of the 3.
So potentially when you're talking to investors, you're looking at people that are going to be interested in your business, besides investors, just people, sponsors, partners. The scalability is huge. It's massive. Yeah, so with 8 million kids coming out, but only 500,000 are actually going and playing NCAA or NAIA or junior college. Somewhere around a little bit more than that, probably. Could there be more, or there's just not enough?
Absolutely, because international is huge. Yeah. International sports are huge. I know there are a lot of ADs that I've talked, high school ADs I've talked to from Hawaii. Yeah. And they have a lot of really great talent, and
Are we considering Hawaii International now?
No, we're not. No. I'm just talking about.
Maybe I missed that class.
No, but like,
that was
we're
funny,
not.
You better start laughing.
Yeah. No, we're not considering that international.
Skidmore, I'm gonna have to.
No, it's not even just Hawaii, but like. Even Vermont, when I went to Vermont and stuff, places that are very far out of like your typical Texas and even like I'd say Connecticut and New York, those places have showcases, they have camps, they have all this stuff. Yeah. But somewhere like a Hawaii or a Vermont, they're not going to have the funds or the ability to easily hop on a plane and hop over to a showcase, even though they might have the talent, even though you don't think Vermont does. Yeah. Hawaii apparently does.
No, I'm on it. Great ski resorts. Great skiers. Yeah. But when you look at European kids and Japanese kids at all, when you look at that model, you look at IMG Academy, who keep bringing in kids from 30, 40 different countries because of that elite athlete. They're thinking, you know, the melting pot and the elite type of athlete now is there's schools that are popping up all over the place like that. There's ski schools. I mean, you mentioned Vermont, but there's international ski schools now. The kids are coming from all over the world to come here. So I agree with you. I think your model could be not only just here, but I think expanding internationally to give those parents who have the means to bring their kids and who have the kids that have the ability to come to the United States and go to school and play NCAA, because there is no NCAA or college athletics.
And they know even less
anywhere in the world.
They know even less than the U.S. parents, obviously, because they think a college sport is just something that every school has, and
Right.
they're all the same, and
Right.
it doesn't matter, you're just playing a college sport. I
Right.
spoke to one kid who was on the tennis team at Skidmore, and
Yeah.
he was telling me his, process of coming here, and from abroad, and he was just like, yeah, I basically, like, I really wanted to go to college in the U.S., but I didn't know the steps to take. I didn't know the recruiting
Right.
process. I didn't know who to contact. I basically just kind of, like, willed my way into playing tennis here, and he ended up at Skidmore, and I think he's happy with the decision and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's, he wishes that he was more informed throughout the recruiting process, and wishes that there was a place where he could have went to say, oh, I don't know how to play tennis in college, but here's a blog on the 5 tips to play tennis in college, and here's who I can contact, and these are the things that I can do behind that.
Right. So do you see, because there are these massive recruiting sites, and everybody's evaluating players, especially in the big 4 sports, where people assume that there's a lot of, actually, because there are eyeballs and there's interest, people care about who's going to play basketball at Kentucky and UConn.
Oh, absolutely.
People care about who's going to go play football at Alabama and Clemson and Notre Dame. So there's enough content in that space. What I love about your space is that you're serving parents and those kids, the top tier of the elite, right? People know who they are, right? They know, because they're going on.
Nick Saban.
They're going on. They're going on trips, right? They know, regardless whether they think if you have kids evaluate Nick Saban, you're not going to get 100% saying he's a great guy. Is he a great coach? Yeah, but down here is the massive part of who your interested consumers are, right? And that space is you're not charging kids right now, right?
No.
So there will be a membership fee at some point to unlock some more content.
Right. It'll be minimal, but you'll still have access to some of the content and stuff. But right now I don't feel like we don't have enough content to charge people. We don't want to rip people off.
Right. Never. You're providing a service, right? So you have content that's great. So that's your model, is going to go to a more of a membership model as you grow. And you're going to create partnerships with some strategic, kind of synergistic. I'm thinking of every corporate word to throw in here right now.
Low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. Loop me in on that. So you need to find some partners now that it aligns perfectly with your same audience, right? So someone could connect through. Maybe they are looking at Huddle or Max Preps, or that kind of connects the dots, or it's international or colleges directly. Right. To kind of come back to where you have this special, because your content to me is still like Travelocity. It's still like, it's that if I'm rating something and it's open and free for now, I may be interested in kind of, okay, well, now I know about University of Vermont, but now I know about the coach, and I'm looking at that, but what other information can I mine out of your site is I think what you're trying to figure out right now.
Right.
The scaling.
Absolutely.
So now we know that especially the international students from Hawaii and Vermont.
Yep. They'll have outreach.
Outreach. You'll figure out that part of it. Is there anything else that you want to, kind of talk about your experience, what you see next, what it's like to be an entrepreneur?
That's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't realize it. I mean, granted, I make my own hours and can be in Saratoga on a Tuesday without any permission from anyone.
Right.
But I mean, this is my job 24/7. This is what I'm doing 24/7. I'll wake up in the middle of the night and remember that I had to do something and have to go do it, or I take it home with me. I take it away with me, basically. The first time actually being away from it for 10 days was when I went to India, because I literally had no internet service and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I was getting really anxious about things, and I mean, luckily everything was handled okay while I was gone, but it's still just like that constant worry, because it's basically like your child. You're seeing it through from an idea to where it's at now and where it'll be in 6 months, and then another 6 months from there. So it's a very rewarding experience. The day that the site launched was such a relief. And now it's like, we had our relief, and now we're like, okay, now we can make it better. And how do we make it better from there? And constantly trying to update things. And I mean, in my mind, I don't think it'll ever be a perfect site, because there's always going to be something like, oh, I want this done, and I want this done. And it might not happen right away, but I think we'll get there eventually. So
tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, and Rob's going to edit in some information. You'll be able to put in, like,
sure,
her email address. And so how could they get a hold of you?
So I guess the easiest way is to contact us on our website, lockerroomtalk.com.
Yeah.
And then also if you search Locker Room Talk on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, it'll show up first thing.
Okay.
Or even on Google. And people can message us on either of those. There's a message thing on Facebook that people can message us through there. They've done that a bunch. Or my email, which is my first name dot my last name at lockerroomtalk.com, which he's editing in. So.
He's gonna edit it in with music, and you're gonna cut out all the other bad dad jokes.
All the bells and whistles.
And Lisa, you guys get the blog hopefully up on your website.
Yep.
Right. Big kudos to Lisa. So, I hope this wasn't, you did great.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing it.
You did great, and so thanks for showing up and being my first guest in the corner of this little, of our conference room. So that's it.
We'll check back in a year.
I'm on a new wave.